All right, it's about 9 o'clock. Call the Maxwell County Commissioners Court to order this Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. And ask Ms. Wallace to call the roll.
Mr. Ray?
Here.
Mr. Weir?
Here.
Mr. Eager?
Here.
Mr. Riley?
Please join us in the pledge of allegiance. Thank you, I appreciate it. For the record, the policeman is.
Thank you.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge to the flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Please remain standing for the invocation. Pastor Will Bradley.
Thank you, sir. If you will, join hands with someone this morning. We're going to go to the Lord in prayer. We're going to pray the Lord's Prayer today together in unison. I will speak and then you can follow me after. Our Father in heaven. Let's do better, please. Our Father in heaven. Hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come.
Your kingdom come.
Your will be done.
Your will be done.
On earth.
On earth.
As it is in heaven.
As it is in heaven.
Give us this day.
Give us this day
Our daily bread.
our daily bread.
And forgive us our debts.
And forgive us our debts.
As we forgive
As we forgive
our debtors.
our debtors.
Do not
And do not
lead us into temptation.
lead us into temptation.
Let's try that again. And do not
And do not
lead us into temptation.
lead us into
But
temptation.
deliver us
But deliver
from
us
the evil one.
from evil.
For yours is the kingdom,
For yours is the
the
kingdom,
power,
the power,
and the glory forever.
and the glory forever.
Father, just give us the wisdom and guidance that we need today. I thank you, Lord, for the opportunity to serve you. I thank you, God, for every individual in this room that's serving you today. Bless them and be kind to us today. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
You be careful. Appreciate you. Appreciate your whole life.
So, that was an interesting exercise for me because my fingers are kind of skinny and these two gentlemen had big hands. It was reminiscent of, I was kind of surprised because it was reminiscent of having to hold hands and pray with Commissioner Soltemeyer. All right, commissioners, I'm going to throw you a small curveball this morning because I only discovered it about 20 or 30 minutes ago. We have a public hearing on the development rules and regulations that a lot of us have been working on really hard. And Mr. Bass is here, and Ms. Ashley's here, and she's been working on it as hard as anybody. And so, but unfortunately, somehow or other, an actual action item in the 22 items on the agenda didn't get placed to actually vote to adopt the rules today. So my proposal to you, my curveball is that we have the public hearing, we go through everything, we have all the discussions we can have with Mr. Bass and Ms. Ashby, all the discussions among yourselves, we get everything as possibly vetted as we can in a public meeting here today, so that on the next meeting, it's merely, hopefully, it will merely be perfunctory, that it's just an agenda item to vote on. Of course, there always is a possibility of discussion, but I guess my suggestion is that we do as much as we possibly can today to get this lined up and ready for a vote. Anyone disagree? And my apologies that it'll be January the 23rd, 4th, 3rd, before we can be for a vote, unless we have a special meeting, we want to do this in. All right, with that said, I saw some shaking of the heads up and down, I didn't see any real opposition, so that's up, then I'm gonna go ahead and open the public hearing on proposed Rankin County development rules and regulations. Let's see. So we have two individuals signed up to speak in the public hearing, and I would draw your attention that we have two sets of written comments to the proposed rules. One from Ms. Chalita Riley. She focuses a lot on, I think, the tiny homes and honey camps and such as that. You had an issue period, and one from Mr. Welch. And then we have two individuals that wish to speak today during the public hearing. First, Kenneth Welch.
I'm basing my comments on the October 18, 2023 draft proposal, which was posted on the county website. The agenda is substantial, but an adequate review of the proposal is difficult without the most recent version. The changes in sections 205 through 318 regarding the road and water requirements have provided a great deal of clarity. The addition of rainwater harvesting has the potential of making a positive impact on water availability in Blanco County. However, I have some concerns. I believe you need to clarify several definitions. You have indicated that 2 units, whether RV, tiny home, or campsites, will require cladding and numerous infrastructure requirements. This appears as an assault on individual property rights. However, with clearer definition of enterprise, you may be able to allay my concern. A landowner who chooses to provide facilities for visiting relatives, close friends, etc., should not be required to subdivide property to do so. In the subdivision, if the subdivision is in support of a business, that should be made clear. Additionally, whether existing subdivisions are exempt is not crystal clear. Does the recent adoption of taking permit the county to require upgrades of all RV parks? You have not defined campground. Are you referring to a campground for RVs, or are you referring to a primitive campground? If primitive, are you requiring facilities to have infrastructure plans, including drainage plans, water availability, and OSSF? Again, if the sites are for my family's personal use, not a business, these rules and regulations should not apply. My family routinely camp to provide potable water and an igloo cooler. Hunting camps have been exempted. Hunting camps have not been defined, and hunting can be interpreted to cover many things: deer, rabbits, rocks, fossils, arrowheads, etc. This exemption should be eliminated as a matter of fairness. You may have addressed some of these issues, but working with the October 18th draft has limited the public's ability to adequately review your proposals. I hope you will put a final draft on your website for the public review prior to any vote on this matter. Your copy of my comments for the public record.
Mr. Ron Feasel.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners. Pleasure to be here with you today. At least to get started on the final approval of these new subdivision regs. I only looked at the water availability study portion of it, section 205. And I have one question, and maybe an issue that we could clarify with just a couple of words here. It's on page 44, section 205.102, regarding exemptions from water availability regulations. There's a part B which says one of the exemptions is a water availability report shall be presented to the commissioner that owns the plat. That seems very odd to me. It seems like that be included in the documents required to be submitted with the plat under section 202.520.
Ron, what was the exemption that you're referring to first? 205 what?
205.102 exemptions, part B and C under exemptions, on page 44. This is what came out to the number on my plan.
Shall be presented to the commissioners upon submission.
Of the plat, yeah. That's not that doesn't sound like you want to exempt the report from the water availability regulations. It might be needed to be included under section 202.520, which is the following document shall be submitted with the plat. It could be a cut and paste error, but I do have one question.
What do you show the title of 102?
202, I'm sorry. 202.520.
We're at 205.
No. Doing two different, water availability regs, 205.102.
Right. What title did you show?
Mine says applicability,
Right.
and then it gives exemptions down at the lower part of that.
That's kind of.
There could be a situation where you may not need to submit a water availability report as described for surface water if you're having an applicant who's going to use. If you're having groundwater in your subdivision, you should have a water availability report done. But if it's surface water only, I don't know that that's necessary, and I wonder if that's the intent of providing that exemption. And if it is, then that needs to be expanded to say, or to say water availability report shall be presented to the commission upon submission of the plat for any.
Are we sure that A, B, and C refer to exemptions, or when it says exempted hereafter, is it buried somewhere further down?
No, I didn't see the further down part.
Okay.
And it could be that it could be those B and C could even be combined into one and added to section 202.520, which lists the documents that shall be submitted with the plat. It's just a little bit confusing when I read it, and I tried to figure out what the intent might be, and that's,
When you say 202, what? 5?
202.520. That's just the listing of the documents that have to accompany the submitted plat. And that would include the water availability study if it's required.
So on the original, whenever I started this, everything in the water availability study came from your office.
Yes.
I just pretty much took your stuff.
Right.
That's about it.
And I wasn't claiming it was perfect at the
Okay,
time.
I was just saying.
But I further reading and careful study, I found a couple of things that confused me a little bit, and I thought it'd be worth bringing that, so it wouldn't confuse people in the future. And it could be just cut and paste error or artifact left over from the other previous rules that we're trying to clarify.
So B and C, you would like to move to
202.520. You wouldn't even necessarily have to change the language if that makes it simpler in the process. But B and C could be combined into just one for simplicity.
Because I'm not seeing 202.520.
It's under plat details under 02.500. It says, the following documents shall be submitted with the plat. And it lists a lot of, several documents, so 15 or 20 or so, something like that.
Mr. Page,
I think he's working on an older version. I think he's working with an older version.
I just printed this off the website, so maybe I'll print it in the previous version. This is back from, November, December, or something like that, so it's a different one.
There was a new version put on the website like just recently.
Okay, I was looking at this last week.
And the new version, there is no 202.500.
Okay.
It stops at 202.401.
Okay. I apologize, man, I'm just trying to,
But in order to address what you're talking about, we need to, B and C, either we can reword it within that section, or we can move it to a section where it doesn't work. Kim, do you have any thoughts on?
I have to take a closer look at it.
Okay.
and I'd be happy to visit
Okay.
the attorney just to make sure that we're covered on that, because we worked really hard on this to get it.
Right.
I just want us to get it
Yeah.
right.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, let me ask you a concept question.
Yes, sir.
So there are some exemptions that allow someone to divide property into parcels without having to file a plat.
Right.
And some of those involve dividing into 4 pieces because it's family members. And some of them, if you're dividing into 10-acre tracts and meet some other requirements. But, and in those instances, you can have 4 families, 8 families, 20 families, drawing from the aquifer, even if it's not platted.
Correct.
Why, even if there's not a platting requirement, why wouldn't the county be interested in having a water availability study for people who are going to be living on those tracts, unplatted tracts?
I think it would be advisable, and I believe that because the water availability studies have been an extremely valuable part of subdivision regulations in Blanco County. It's benefited the Commissioners Court. They can confidently approve a subdivision knowing that the water supply has been proven up. The developer and the realtors can market the properties feeling that they've got a good supply of water. The purchasers benefit from that same thing. In many cases, the neighboring property owners can feel some level of comfort because the report will show the effect of the withdrawal of groundwater from that subdivision's effect on the boundaries of that property over a long term.
I ask you that because when we're talking about 520, which is there, wherever, your concept was to put it into the planning checklist of planning requirements. But if we're going with, the idea that some things are going to be exempted, it needs to not necessarily just be part of the planning requirements. It needs to be, I guess, a standalone provision.
Or a general requirement or something. I agree with that.
Okay.
So, question in that scenario. Let's say I have a family ranch of 100 acres. I have 4 brothers and we're going to split the 25 acres each. Or let's go even smaller. Let's just say 40 acres and we're going to do 8 acres each. Or however, yeah. I guess that's, I can only do 4, right? In my exemptions. So I'm only having 4 tracts
Under the family.
under the family. I'm not building any interior roads. I mean, that's just another expense on a family that's just trying to do an inheritance basically to your family.
But the bird ranch are all greater than 10 acres and didn't have to be platted. I think it did get platted for some reason, but anyway. Certain larger ones in your family
Okay, so
could happen.
if I was a ranch owner in Round Mountain, Texas, that owns a lot of land on the 281 corridor, and I was to divide it up very small, then I can bit more. I have a hard time with the family side of it though.
Why is it that you don't want, Mitchell and your other brothers to have water?
But I don't want the family to have to go through a large, expense of doing a water availability study. You know, because it's only a small, it's not a large. I'm not dividing it into 20 homes. I'm not dividing it into something.
I understand that issue, and I think that's something that needs to be carefully considered, because there's a parallel. Let's say that you've got the same range. Let's say he's got 5 or 6 pastures in it, each of them have 50 or 80 or 100 acres, whatever. He wants the well on each tract. You could do that, because it's agricultural well, it can be exempt. He doesn't have to do a water availability study, but he's going to impact the aquifer. In fact, anytime you have a hole in the ground that pulls water from the milkshake, you know, you've got a limited number of straws for the milkshake, doesn't satisfy everyone. So I think that there probably should be some consideration given for very smallish, let's say subdivisions of 2 or 4 or whatever that the commissioners decide on. And it is an extensive process to do a water availability study, even if you're just doing one aquifer test. And you've got, say, 100 acres or less, and you do 1 test. And if you had 105, you have to do 2 tests, the way I understand it. So it can be expensive, and I don't know that that's going to be necessary just for a situation where you're just going to have an additional well or 2 or 3 or 4. The idea, I think, is when you have some significant impact where it's going to be multiple wells on 5 acres or even 10 acres or whatever. Or if you're going to be providing water through 1 or 2 or 4 wells as a public water system. That's a significant impact on the aquifer.
Is this a fair question or not? Can you give us a mark for you of how many straws, regardless of whether there's an exemption or not exemption, or what the circumstances are of the subdivision? How many straws is the break point where a water availability study ought to happen?
And I'll insert, you know, because I would think 5. What if we did 5?
I'm somewhere in that, I was thinking, you know, 4, 6, 10, but, pardon me, I need another cup of coffee, I guess. It's really hard to determine that because it may depend on what part of the county you're in. In some areas, wells only make 2 or 3 or 5 gallons a minute, and others it makes 10, 20, whatever. So that can be a determining factor, but I think it probably should involve, I'm going to say 4 or 5 or 6 wells, and it depends on the tract size. If you're dividing a 100-acre range, it's different than dividing a 600 or 1,000-acre range between siblings.
But if I'm exempt on a family division of 4 or fewer, if you say that 5 wells, 5 tracts or more, regardless exemptions, are going to require a water availability study. Does that sound feasible?
I think so, because it's going to be pretty rare that you're dividing a tract up into 250 acre homicides.
Right.
I mean, it is
To meet the exemptions. Right.
I think that's a reasonable approach, and one reason I'm hesitant because it's a commissioner's decision. You have to determine your comfort level, because it's so variable. I can't give you a single answer for the entire county, but I think the family division into 4 or even 5 or anything 5 or more, or you could just say more than 5. There's any number of ways to approach it. And I think you're on the right track, because I sympathize with the need to accommodate family inheritances and distribution of family lands and that sort of thing. I have less sympathy when someone's trying to use that to to give the ranch foreman a track and Uncle Jim Bob twice remove the track and things like that. That begins to get a little more problematic. But, I think that there needs to be some accommodation made in that line, and I think that that's reasonable. And it would even be reasonable in areas where you have, 2, 3, 5 gallon minute wells. If you're just using it for domestic purposes, I know some ranches that they're happy to get 1 gallon of it. You know, they got a storage tank and a timer and pump savers and things like that, so I think that would work, yeah.
Can I ask you, if it's a family division like that, and let's say there's 4 wells on, and then the property next to it does get subdivided, and it does require a study. Part of that study, does it still reflect the wells around it as a collective study that sees the other well, or it's just that subdivision? Because at one time, we looked at a radius around it, which would pick up on those, they'd still be registered. You'd still have data on each well.
The groundwater district would probably have data on those wells on that family subdivision part of it. And if they're immediately adjacent to the proposed new subdivision, those wells that are owned by those individuals are required to be reported as part of the water availability report and their production capabilities, locations, that sort of thing. So they're considered. They may not be tested as part of that study, although I've seen that happen. I've seen it where we've had a water availability study that drilled a pumping well, a new well, and then they used 1 or 2 wells on adjacent properties as observation wells, and that worked out really good because that included the neighbor and the property owner, and they got a lot of information about not only the water availability study, but their own wells. So it can be beneficial, yes.
Anyone else?
I'll be happy once again to coordinate with maybe Chris. I've worked with you a lot on this, sort of the county attorney, if we need to just tweak it just a little bit, but we're very close.
Yeah, yeah, we are, and, I'm sure we can do that.
That's all I've got. Good job, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron, there was, before you sit down,
Yes, sir.
in your water demo, that on a subdivision that is gonna solely be on, it's gonna be solely on surface water. Is there any need to say, and I think it's worded right, I talked to Paul yesterday on it, but is there any need to say an acre feet, you know, like, for instance, I know like the city of Johnson City has X amount of acre feet on the Perdomo River. You know, I know whenever I did the water board that AIM was on now, I remember everybody talking about the acre feet that they have off the lower Colorado. Is there any need to show the acre feet, or I think it's worded in there pretty, that it's worded in there that Paul thinks it's covered. I just want to know about that acre feet. I was wanting to see if that was something that needs to be provided or not.
I think that well, I need to go and look at the new version, but I think that the water availability issue with public water systems that rely on surface water, that includes that they're required to provide documentation showing that they have a legal right to the surface water that's going to be provided for that new subdivision. They need to show the infrastructure where the pipelines are going to be, the take point is what it's often called. It's from an existing water supply or even a newer one. So there's a lot of documentation that has to be provided. Surface water is frequently measured in acre feet per year.
Right. So it's the way it's worded in here, it's the location and sources of surface water documentation that sufficient quantity and quality of surface water is available to meet full build out. And Paul seems to think that that was sufficient the way that was worded.
I think it is because the public water system, an existing public water system is going to have surface water permits from the TCEQ, maybe the LCRA, that sort of thing. And that is usually measured in acre feet, and it usually is based upon the, what's it called, the demand. I think they call it the demand, whether it's existing or, future demand. It's just all considered in their surface water permit. And I think that would do it. I'm not a surface water expert, but I think that would do it. And it should certainly be appropriate for that, if they're getting it from an existing water supply system, that system needs to know that they've got enough to meet their obligations under this new subdivision. And if it's a new public water system, then it's on surface water, they don't have to go through the entire surface water permit process with TCEQ, and there's ample opportunity to look into the supply, availability, the demand needs that are expected, that sort of thing. So once again, surface water is a whole new animal, and along the same lines, I'm not sure that there's one spot in here where a water availability report is required under a surface water plan that may need to be struck too. But any water usage involving groundwater should have a water availability study, except for those exemptions we were discussing earlier.
I would like to point out that even though they may be regulated by TCEQ, surface water providers wouldn't be the first entities if we regulated that overlook.
That's right. That's exactly right. And a lot of surface water entities are looking for additional water now as growth expands. And there's an old, I guess you call it a joke, that the answer to groundwater problems is surface water. The answer to surface water problems is groundwater. So if you run short of either side of the equation, the answer lies on the other side. And I'm not sure that that's a long-term viable concept. So we need, who was it? Somebody raised in eternal vigilance or something like that. I can't remember. Something. Trust to verify. Yeah. We're doing the best we can. You bet. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak during this public hearing on the proposed development?
Here.
Come on up. Mr.
Josh Lemons. Yeah, I'm a land surveyor and attorney out of Fredericksburg. I understand the complexity of the regulations and the task y'all have at hand. It's a difficult process, and it's a delicate balance between following the law and also making sure you try to meet the needs of your community. I live in Fredericksburg, grew up in Mason, been around this whole hill country parts, born in Hays County. And we've seen a lot of change, but at the end of the day, there's a few things that the state law allows you to do, and there's a few things that it doesn't. County authority is limited. It's limited to what the state gives you the power to do. And so it's not a open ability to go create any law and every law anywhere and everywhere. And so when it comes to the affidavit land location, that is a common thing that is passed by some counties in this part of the state, but when the legislature updated the state statutes, they changed the law. In section 232.001H, there was a provision of law in the local government code that stated that the commissioner's court or the county authority responsible for approving plats may not require an analysis, study, document, agreement, or similar requirement to be included in or as part of an application for a plat, development permit, or subdivision of land that is not explicitly required by state law. Exempt transactions that are provided for under 232 under the exemptions Of course, as you're well aware, we're updated in the last cycle as well, effective September 1st of last year. And in those changes, we have the exemptions for 10-acre tracts and so forth, as you are well aware. When we do an exempt transaction and we convey a tract of land that comes under those transactions, that is still considered a subdivision under state law, but it is an exempt subdivision. So it's a division of the land that divides the land for someone to purchase. And those exemptions are laid out in there. This provision here states that you cannot require any document that is not explicitly authorized under state law, and that would include an affidavit of land location. In addition, the requirements in your affidavit of land location are quite extreme. A homeowner on a ranch, on a rural part of the county, would have to have the entire property surveyed. Now, that may not seem like a big deal to you, but as a surveyor, that creates a lot of problems. There are rural tracts of land in this county, and in Gillespie County, where I survey predominantly, that have major discrepancies. There are many errors that occurred back in the old days of surveying, because the land at the time was worth 25, maybe 50 cents an acre, and these errors occurred because the land wasn't worth a whole lot, and there was a lot of techniques that were employed by the surveyors and sometimes the attorneys preparing the deeds that resulted in huge discrepancies. So undertaking a large survey of maybe 1,000 acres or 500 acres and surveying the entire ranch in order to cut out one exempt tract for, say, a family member, or a 10-acre tract greater than 10 acres for an exempt transaction would result in an extreme amount of expense and work that is not backed up by state authorities. So I strongly recommend looking at that provision to see about removing that. Is my understanding that in Kendall County, they removed this once the new law was passed. So you might want to do some verification on the legality of the affidavit of land location. I question its authority at all under Texas law today. Second, there is a provision I noticed in the exempt tract, particularly I noticed on page 10 of your new regulation you're proposing, concerning frontage on public roads and roads built to county spec. Again, under state law, the authority to the county is only as expressly provided in the statutes and under any other form of state law. There is not law to just go and make up regulations, in my opinion. And so when you go and you put in new requirements like it must be on road built to county spec, you're kind of going outside the area that is provided within the statutes and within Chapter 232, which is the predominant provision of state law that outlines the county's authority. So I don't see how, under state law, that has any merit or authority whatsoever. When it comes to water availability, there was a lot of discussion about that just a moment ago, and I understand the urgency of water. There's certainly, when we go through years of drought, there's a lot of concern about that. Water availability provisions under state law are not open to everything. You have to have the authority under state law in order to provide a regulation for water availability studies. And I don't know every single statute under state law, but I've read a lot of them. And all the ones that I've read pertaining to water availability over the last few years have provided no authority when the tract is exempt. I'm totally unaware of any statute or any provision of law that grants such authority. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, you introduce yourself as an attorney?
Yes.
And you practice in Fredericksburg?
Yes.
Do you
Mostly I'm a land surveyor. I do represent clients.
So you're a land surveyor?
Yes, as well.
And do you have presently, or have you had any suits filed against a county?
I'm not a litigator. No.
involved in any?
No. This law is new, we don't really know the exact direction it'll take, but, I assume it'll be adjusted. I just prefer to follow state law as it's written in the text.
Thank you. You also have, Mr. Randy Cameron.
Randy.
Cameron,
Randy.
you signed up.
I'll pass.
Actually, so there's an item later on the agenda, number 19, and that's what you wrote down, the affidavit of land. Okay, location. Well, we may come back to that for you. Anyone else? Public hearing. Once, twice. I'm going to close the public hearing portion and open it up for discussion on the development rules and regulations. How would you all like to proceed? Mr. Bass is here and Mr. Session. And should we start with them?
Sure.
Good morning.
Anytime you begin a process of adopting a rule, regulations concerning subdivision or development, you open Pandora's box and all sorts of issues come to light. And today is no different. What I would like to do is very briefly, not read the entire code, of course, but kind of go through it and lay out what's in it and why, and go on from there. The first part of the regulation lays out your general provisions. And that tries to explain what the regulation will address. It does address water availability regulations for plat approvals. So it's tying water availability to a plat application or other project in which the availability requirements might apply. Here is a section on subdivision, extraterritorial jurisdiction. It's pretty standard. The court would either have an agreement with your municipalities, which I understand that you do, or would be requiring applicants to apply with the city or the county. Under section 102 is how do we deal with conflicting regulations, severability of any provision in the development, what documents would be required for review, and if deeds or other transactions are limited to meet the standards of the regulation, how they would comply, and the applicability of any civil and or criminal provisions. 103 is the bond requirements, and I urge again that it's very critical that you have proper bonding and that you follow up with that. That's your major enforcement mechanism, is to enforce the bonds. So there have security bonds, you have maintenance bonds. You can have substitutes for that, such as letters of credit or security bond extensions, irrevocable letters of credit, or other security that's suitable to the court. There are exceptions to subdivision regulations that are set out in 104. There is in the second paragraph there exceptions. As it's presently written, that exception requires an acknowledgement on the part of the Commissioner's Court. And I think that's appropriate. Agriculture use is still exempt under this statute. Family division, if you're dividing the tract into 4 or fewer parts, it's not addressed by the statute as to what happens if you have more than 4 people entitled to a division under a family division. And I don't take that to mean that you can expand the number of parcels, but I think that 4 is the limit. You just they have to pay cash or some other means of exchange for equal value. Lots larger than 10 acres. This is a bone of contention that the recent legislature, I'm not sure they created it, but they sort of carved out an exception for lots over 10 acres that are not dedicated to public use. As I've noted before, the definition of what is required to be platted includes a subdivision of land into 2 or more parts, and the developer wants to lay that out into lots or blocks or other division. That those 2 items requiring plat seem to me to make the third, which is, and they don't dedicate streets, parks, alleys, other common areas. I'm not sure what that means. It means you have to subdivide it and provide a plat, but you don't have to include the streets. I don't know. I think the safer approach is rather than treat that as a whole exemption that you continue to require a plat. So that's how this language has been drafted, to require a plat, where you're laying out lots or subdivision of lots, addition to a lot. Is that very clear?
What reason, which,
That's in 104, 130.
So, I'm sorry, so 104, 130?
104, 130.
It doesn't say anything about laying out streets.
Right.
And you think it should?
No, it says each lot has at least 60 feet of road frontage. So if there are more than 60 feet, it's laid out in the street.
Right. So
That's good.
But if they create a road, an internal road, then it's required to fulfill subdivision rules and regulations.
I think that's the interpretation you need to follow, yes. Veterans Land Board programs, state agency boards.
can we, before you go on, last time I highlighted this, that we were just talking about 130, and I wanted to ask you, this is really more of a sort of a policy thing. I just want to make sure I understand their thinking. That we're okay with 10 acre exemptions, the 10 acre exemption situation, as long as they have only have 60 feet of road frontage, right? And I'm make sure because I can construct 100 acres in such a way that I think I can construct 100 acres and have 600 feet of timber. Just make sure everybody's good with that. Because that's basically, allowing flag lot, but, you know, the gentleman that spoke before points out that they see that this was, 2023 was in fact the year of the developer in the legislature, and flag lots are somewhat allowed use. And it seems to me that and maybe 60 feet isn't really a flag lot. Just making sure y'all are good with the 60 feet.
I am. On a 10-acre tract.
Okay.
Let me ask you this, Judge. With what we know now with the new legislation, is there an ability to put a space between?
I don't know. I don't know if there's an ability to do this. I think the gentleman would say there's not. So, you know, I'm just saying it's 60, whatever you want. It can be 600 or 6, but I don't know what the right answer is. I think that's why I was asking the commissioners. If you have in your wisdom contemplated this for the last several months, and 60 is the number that you all like.
60 is early. You can have side by side. Like you said.
Okay.
Subdivisions that are located within a floodplain, as long as it's, the owner of the land is a political subdivision and the land is in a floodplain and lots are sold to adjoining landowners, that's exempt. One oh four point 170 is an area where we constantly had problems with this language in the statute. The owner does not lay out part of the tract under section 232, and one or more parts is to be retained by the owner, and the other part is to be transferred to another person who will in turn subdivide it. The land that the second party received is subject to the subdivision regulation. Had a call the other day from a county over that issue saying, well, what if they tell the buyer or the seller they have no such plans and then it's later developed? And I think the burden is on the second party, the buyer of that tract, and knowledge of the intent to subdivide is not something that is of the first party that wants to retain a piece of the original tract, but doesn't know what's going to happen to the second. The second party is not free under that exemption to just go out and begin subdividing. He still has the obligation to come before the court for subdivision authority. Now, how do you track that? That's a good question. There's not really any requirement there. Continue to monitor that site, but I suppose once you see signs of development, it's up to the county to bring that forward, bring a suit or inquire, and come to the understanding of the development plan.
Mr. Bassett, if the second track, the back track, has 60 foot coming in, and the buyer of that second track has intent, and they're all over 10 acres, can he sell those tracks on an easement out of that 60 foot, or is he required to go road?
I think I don't know that there could be joint ownership of the driveway by multiple parties. In other words, that 160-foot access opens up into a larger field. I'm not
So you wouldn't even have to do flat tracks, you just bring all those tracks out on one.
Well, I'm saying you could not do that.
Okay.
They can't all own the same piece of property.
You mind if I go back a minute again?
Yeah.
2 minutes, please. On the family division, there's a provision in B that says, if, I guess later, if you have your family division and everything's fine, and later on, the lot is sold, given, or otherwise transferred to an individual who's not related, planning requirements apply. So, again, this is kind of more, I want to make sure the commissioners really mean this. So Commissioner Ether has 100 acres and divides them among family members, and everything's fine, and Commissioner Ether dies, and time passes, and 25 years later, one of the family members decides they want to move into an assisted living and sell theirs. Now we have to plat the 4 divisions. If somebody's going to sell to an outsider. And I guess my question is, there's no time limit on this. And I just wondered if you all have considered that.
I considered in my way of thinking, if I'm gonna divide my family property into 4 parts, and one of my brothers decides that he's not gonna move to Johnson City, he's gonna sell his piece of property, that's his deal, and I'm fine with it. But I divided it to 4 family members. It's now an appraisal district, 4 individual lots divided up to 1, 2, 3, 4.
You said you were fine with moving it to sell 3 acres.
His tract, after it's been divided from that family member, he can't divide it.
But this says you would have to plat with 4 divisions.
It says platting requirements apply. Does it apply to the one lot, or does it apply to the whole thing?
But originally, during the original division, it's going to 4 family members.
But if the platting requirements apply is inside an exception called family division. So maybe I'm misreading. It seems to me that it's saying that if one of the lots is going to be sold outside of the family, the division has to be platted.
If I'm thinking just the original division, if the original division is divided into the 4 family members, then after, that division has been completed, then that individual person can sell their piece of property if they don't own it. I might not own it, but my brother.
But if it's that exhibit there, they're all coming out on the whole family road, and it's 40 feet wide. They don't sell it, so that's 60 feet to sell it, piece of property.
That's the question.
I think that if one of the lot owners, after original division, wants to subdivide, he's gonna have to comply with the county subdivision regulation. And so if everybody's coming in on existing private 40-foot right of way, he's gonna have to acquire a 60-foot easement from his city.
What if he has a deed restriction in there that says the family members require this deed restriction for this family member to sell that to an individual that can no longer be subdivided? Now, for him to sell it to that individual, does that individual need to find 60 feet to go?
If
Somebody can he be on that existing easement, even though he's not a family member, he bought the property, but he's not subdivided. Can he come out on that existing easement as the family member was able to?
normally a tract of land is dependent upon an interior road that is previously existing, it's an internal tract road. It's presumed that the road conveys an interest to allow him to get to his property.
The phrase is dominant estate versus the serving estate. The land over which you travel is the serving estate that has the easement. The dominant estate retains the easement, not the person.
So if the person buys that property, the deed restricted, where he can't redevelop, can he buy it as is and live there? If it's only got a 30-foot or 40-foot old family easement coming up, you're saying it's.
And yet, you have to plat it.
I don't think you have to plat it, he's just buying an individual lot that's already been divided.
But,
What the platting requirements apply to me?
If I'm gonna divide it to 4 people, 3 of them are my family and 1 is this guy, then it has.
that's when planning comes in, is you're trying, in that original family flat, there's a person mixed in there that is not a family member. But if it's sold to his brother, or it's family divided, and then one of the brothers wants to sell it to this guy, then
It's fine.
it's fine.
Okay.
That's the way I read it.
Oh, that's all right.
I think it applies only to the first transaction. Any subsequent transaction that subdivides that parcel has to be subdivided.
If they subdivide, if they just sell it as a whole, it is as a whole, then okay, that has to be done.
Okay. On past favorite cemeteries.
I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
I was trying to get you caught up.
We're down to a division required by lenders. I don't know how often this comes up, but if it's similar deal, as long as they've got a 60-foot easement, should have an exception that applies. If they're gonna have the intention to divide that up further, they have to follow the regulations. On family cemeteries, no further action by the court will be required once they've done the affidavit of land location requirement for the establishment of a family cemetery, except that a note would have to be placed that the tract is for a private cemetery. If there's a person that buys a tract of land that has a family cemetery, that needs to be noted on the plat.
Should there also be a note on there, informing them that the family member who lives not on that property, but on another property has access to it?
I think that's implicit in the cemetery rules, that anybody that has a bona fide interest in the land has access to the lot, or has access to the cemetery. That it doesn't mean that Joe Blow, who's just interested in cemeteries, can necessarily enforce his right of access. But if you have a legitimate interest in who's buried there, you do have that enforceable right.
It's the county's responsibility to tell the subdivider that in your subdivision, you're going to have to allow and have to release from another state to be able to have access to that cemetery 24/7.
It's in the statute. I don't know that it's required to put it in the subdivision, but if you wanted to, I suppose you could do it. Now, if somebody comes up and says, I want to go out there, I'm interested in genealogy, I'm not doing a genealogy study for my family. I'm just doing it because I want to know who's buried there, to help fill out my records. I doubt they have an enforcement interest. And it does not require an exemption if you're going to convey that land to an adjacent landowner. Now, there's been some exception, I think, drawn to affidavit of land location sure. I think that would be part of the court test. But I think the inclusion of this material is necessary to fulfill other parts of the statute and to guarantee that the county has knowledge of appropriate matters anyway.
Do you have an estimate or a guess how many counties in Texas employ the affidavit of land location process?
I don't. I do know that there are several that do, but I don't have a number. So that section carries over the rest of the way to 105. I think that such things as the.
Mr. Knight,
Yes.
before we move on, I put in here, the affidavit of land location, can be approved by a single commissioner. Does not take commissioner's report to approve. Is that sufficient? So if you're bringing me an affidavit saying you're exempt for you're selling your property to your adjacent landowner, I think that a commissioner should be able to sign off on that and don't take the time of getting it on a court agenda. Am I correct with that, or?
I tend to always opt to present stuff to the court. If the court decides that they want to make, it says by the county commissioner is the decision agent for the precinct in which the land is located. The affidavit of fact establishes that that the property falls within one or more of the exceptions. The commissioner shall prepare and sign an order of acceptance. So it gives that authority to the commission. I think, given that language, that's how it can be done. Now, if that commissioner can't decide,
Then you can take
then he has to bring
right.
Here's the reason, I stumbled on that last night, here's the reason I don't like that. Presently, you have a court with 4 commissioners, and probably almost in my entire time of service, you had 4 commissioners that pretty much went down the same road. They were interested in quality subdivisions, quality development in Langland County. However, I won't name names, but I could, prior commissioners who were completely off the reservation. And what I mean by that is, I don't have any trust in in their judgment about if this exemption applies or that exemption applies, which is what the affidavit of land says. And if a commissioner, and if some commissioners that I can think of in the past, or maybe someone who gets elected in the future, is of that ilk, then the general tenor of the commissioner's court and how Langland County should be developed is at risk.
And I can agree with that. The only reason I presented it this way was just to try to speed the system. You know, I know we've been hit multiple times by people trying to get something closed and they've got to wait for a court date. And, you know, if it was a simple, you know, I'm selling to my neighbor, you know, it's obvious, no-brainer, but if you want to make it come through court, then I don't have a problem with that.
Well, I've got a couple thoughts, and one I don't like, but just in terms of trying to accommodate. One would be a double signature like they have to do on checks. Commissioner and county judge, any commissioner and county judge. I don't like that because it means I have to get involved with it. That's one idea. Another idea is like we do, transfers within a fund or within a account, where I can sign off on what you will have to ratify the next commission. So that can speed it up and make it start,
But that might be a catch-22. I like the idea of 2 signatures and, you know, say the commissioner and the county judge, and if for some reason one or the other does not agree upon it, then it goes to the court as a whole. I'm fine with that.
Where are you shaking your head?
No, I think, I'm assuming that yours is fine. I made a note that that's an area you want to discuss.
I agree that it should be at least two.
Okay.
I agree it should be at least two for the reasons that you laid out. Whether it's the whole commissioner's court or two, and then if you disagree, bring it. I don't have a preference personally on which way it should go. But I think I talked to you before that I was uncomfortable just having one commissioner sign it, but legally.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that, no problem. No, she says.
So is that something we want to change then to two people? Is that-
Yes.
Okay.
The county judge and a commissioner.
That does address, if you have two contrary.
That's right.
I suppose the remainder of the court, noting that that's happened, could raise a flag.
To clarify that a little further, should it be, the commissioner of the precinct that the land is in?
I thought so, it didn't say that, but I assume you all meant it.
That's the way, the intent was just that.
Yeah, when,
But it doesn't say.
the wording wasn't there, so, you know, if somebody in precinct 2 go 3 and say, hey, sign up, can you sign up on this? Oh, I got to see you.
No, yeah, that's, please include that, Kim.
I will.
Any other questions on that section? Now, 105 lays out the statutory authority for the rules and regulations under the water code and others. It attempts to identify all of the variables that the court had authority to consider. So I think that it's fairly comprehensive. Subject to any notes that you all have. 106 is definitions of the various and sundry terms used in the subdivision regulation. We try to make sure that we've covered everything. I think it's fairly comprehensive.
Mr. Bass, whenever I say clear zone, what do you interpret by clear zone? It's not in definitions. But if I'm talking about a clear zone on the road, the right of way, what do you interpret as clear zone? It's not, it's further back, like in the mailboxes area.
I would assume a clear zone for a driveway or a mailbox.
Yes.
Is a sideline distance, so that you could tell it's safe to enter the roadway.
It was just not a very good, I didn't find a very good definition of clear zone. I know that, you know, talking to some TxDOT personnel, a 7 foot is a clear zone. AASHTO has it maybe somewhere, I just couldn't find it, but, you know, I didn't include it in there, but that was a question that I had. And I didn't know if you knew off the top of your head.
I think AASHTO's the 7 foot, that seemed pretty narrow to me, but I wouldn't try to go beyond, much beyond AASHTO or anybody else that has already with us.
Okay.
Right. 107 is your enforcement availability, remedies, so forth. Generally, you have civil and criminal penalties for violation of regulations. That can be done either by your county attorney or an attorney that you decide to hire for that purpose. 108 is to provide some authority for the commissioner's court themselves to settle disputes. 120
Before you get into 120, 108, 140 is the last one in 108. I'm not able to share my general counsel history.
Right.
So it's a little difficult for me to tie the commissioner's court by whatever Blanco County Ground Conservation District, Blanco Conservation District does. We have a great relationship with them, and we depend on them, and they do final work, and I don't have any problem with it at all. But I just, generally speaking, we don't necessarily agree that a commissioner court in the future has to accept what the groundwater conservation district says, and not be able to, this whole 108 is all, or, 108 is all about relief by the commissioner's court, so it's about essentially a waiver. And I hate to agree that the commissioner's court will be bound by BPGCD. Guided, advised, directed, but bound by. Everyone's fine with that.
No, I'm fine, like, including advised by, like, the Groundwater Conservation District.
Well, it says unless prior. Their approval once it's reached the commissioner's court.
If they made a recommendation, you
Consider.
consider.
No, I'm fine with that kind of thing.
And then before you move to 120, because we seem to be going at a pace here, but we're losing people, I want some people to leave. And I'm wondering if you mind if I ask Mr. Williams a question? Sure. Mr. Williams, do you have a second?
Yeah.
Williams or Lemons?
Lemons.
You said something during the presentation that I want to make sure I do this here. I thought I understood you to say that if I have 1,000 acres and I want to give one of the commissioners an acre.
Right.
And I want to do my affidavit that you have to survey my entire 1,000 acres.
That was the language that I read in that affidavit requirements. It required a description of the remainder, not just the part that's being conveyed. That's unusual. I've never seen that anywhere else.
But that description, that's what I wasn't looking at the language, but that's where you use the description can come from a former deed. I mean, you have to go out and actually survey the whole 1,000 acres.
I'm talking about, what I was reading in there indicated me required meets and bounds description of the entire remainder, to indicate what actually remains.
See, that was not my intent.
Is that what y'all understood?
I think I know, it was, anything 25 acres.
25 acres.
If I had 25 acres and I was giving somebody 10, we would have to survey that remaining 15. I believe that's what I understood and read. Which is still.
Am I coming up? And
This is a history.
Yes, Mr. Drury, would you mind, just so it's on the recordation?
Yes, what I had read was, I think you had 25 acres or under, and you were giving or deeding somebody 10 acres, and the entire 25 would have to be surveyed, and an additional affidavit of land location would have to be prepared.
Okay, but Mr. Gibbons, I'm pretty sure in his original presentation, he said 1,000. So,
Well, that was my understanding. Let me let's read this provision, so we can provision.
Would it not be in the, when you're selling the parcel you're cutting out, would that not be described in the meets and bounds of that?
Not the remainder, no.
No, not the remainder, but it would mention the fact that it was coming out.
It was coming out of it,
So
correct?
would that be enough? So,
I would think so, but I'm being told you have to survey the whole thing.
yeah, see why you.
Yeah, it says a written description of parent tract. And accept a description of the remainder, so what's required is a description of the remainder.
Where do you see that?
This is on page 14, the bottom is 14B. And in survey terminology, a description of the remainder is a survey. This is held to survey standards. You have to go do all the field work of the perimeter, resolve all boundary conflicts as to the perimeter tract. And on some of these large tracts, this can be quite a task. And it's not necessary unless you've got, a real small tract and you want to make sure, whenever we do a survey, we make sure the remainder is in compliance with the statute, because that's our obligation as a surveyor. We have to follow state law and local laws that are in accordance with state law. And so we go and we look at all these to make sure that there is a remainder that be sufficient, but we don't go and survey it, because that can encounter a whole lot of work on a large tract of land. That can be an extraordinary amount of work, an extraordinary cost. They just need to sell 2 acres to be able to pay their bills to live out their life.
Could it just be a description that states the parcel that is coming out of, that here's the volume and page number of that particular larger piece? Just notes it on there, as described, this volume and page.
Well, that would be a reference to the legal instrument where it is, but what is actually contemplated here from the surveyor's terminology, the legal terminology is a description. That's a survey, it's a legal description, a survey.
So, not to put words in your mouth, because you have some problems with the county exercising this kind of authority in general, but if we change the wording to get rid of that phrase, that terminology that's specific to surveyors, we would at least move the ball forward to where we're not trying to survey large tracts to get a small tract. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're up to chapter 120, section 120.
This is where we have added considerable coverage for recreation, vehicle parks, tiny home parks, or campgrounds. There's a definition section, 120.001, that defines what RV camp, RV vehicles are. It sets out some of the regulations for hard surface, or a path for them to park that on. 120.002 lays out, again, the requirements for inspection or certification or approval of that. 120.003 lays out the survey is required, the plans and specifications for drainage is required, reasonable specified plans to provide adequate public or community water supply, certification that adequate groundwater is available for the development, and then you have an either under C, provide sanitary sewer lines, reasonable specific plan, on-site sewage facilities, and reasonably specified plans for providing sewage treatment and disposal under chapter 26 of the water code if that discharge exceeds 5,000 gallons per day. Needs to be specified roads laid out in the plat. So essentially, if it's going to be a RV park, you're going to require
substantially the same compliance with the things about infrastructure, planning, and all that you do for a major subdivision. But they can, have a few options that are more limited. So I think that it's a pretty comprehensive, it tries to hew a line that makes commercial operations subject to commercial rules. You know, there are exceptions for for family type facilities. So I don't know. This goes on then for a couple of pages of what else is required. You have to have a men's restroom, a women's restroom, you have to have a washroom, you have to have service buildings to provide those things.
Yes, the restrooms in all is for the RV park, not for the tiny homes. If each home has a restroom for itself, then the
And if it can comply, ties in with a septic system or some other means of providing wastewater. Yes,
they don't have to provide the wash house and restrooms and shower.
Then there's a fee schedule for RV parks and tiny home parks. The developer's responsibilities are laid out in section 200. There is a provision for a preliminary conference with the commissioner in the precinct where the development is going to be situated. And they can invite the BPG, city representative, and the county attorney if they choose to. The county requires them then to submit the full package known as a plat application under 104. And then it lays out plat requirements. There has to be a digital copy of the plat provided, unless the surveyor is not capable of producing such a plat, and then they can.
Is 202-305 the law provision?
I'm sorry?
Is it county clerk provision? Is it this notion of a digital copy? Is that for us? Did we come up with that?
Kathy, is that the digital, the DWG, that's for the final addressing, correct? Yes.
Oh, so it's the county script.
And I presume that copy could also be used by the tax office. All fees have to be paid on filing of the plat application. Then it requires what you have to know in the plat application on the plat. That continues over to the following page. The following documents should be submitted with the plat, and they're under 202.340. There's a long list of documents there. If their land is located in a special flood hazard area, that has to be noted. The property has to be built in certain standards in that area. The water availability study under 16 says it's going to be required under the provisions of section 205 earlier. I think that we discussed that. So if any of the plat
application requirements are not met, then the person reviewing the plat application will submit a list of the areas of which the plat is insufficient and give them a statement or essentially an indication of inadequate or incomplete plat application. That does not start your 30 days to run, but it's imperative that be done on a consistent basis. So once the plat application is complete, and everybody signs off on it, then the court or the judge can determine that it's ready for hearing, give notice of the hearing, schedule a hearing, and proceed. If the subdivision plat is to be denied, you have to give the plat applicant notice of that decision, and the county judge shall inform the developer in writing of such action, any action required by the developer. That can either be, what your options are in considering the plat is to approve the plat, to approve with conditions, or to reject the plat. If you reject the plat, there's something fundamentally wrong that probably should be kicked out or notified to the developer prior to it on the court's docket. It's an incomplete application. So it's going to be pretty rare that you decline an application in court here. The approval and approval with conditions. Approval with conditions is you say, well, we will approve it when you've done this, that, or the other. And then those things can be cured at a later date. The plat is in a approved state, but it's not a final plat against you. It's not a legal plat. They can't file it, you can't start selling lots until they're satisfied with the condition.
So the notice that comes from the county judge could say, your application for plat approval has been denied by the commissioner's court on the basis of failure to provide sufficient water availability to residents, failure to provide sufficient transportation infrastructure.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I don't see a reason why it should come to the commissioner's court unless they have all that together.
It shouldn't come to the court, the county judge, to be docketed until all those things are satisfied.
Yeah, it shouldn't even be put on the agenda until everything is specified. That should be
I guess the only reason would be if, on its face, they show a water availability study. Maybe it's marginal, but on its face, it's good enough for Ms. Harrison to check a box. But when it comes to the court, the approval, maybe a majority of commissioners are uncomfortable with it.
I suppose that's a possibility.
Yeah, that's possible.
You just have to be able to define particularly how it's insufficient. The approval of a plat expires 1 year from the date the approval is granted. If no progress is made on approval or completion of the project, all fees to the county shall be forwarded to the county, and you start over. So once your plat approval is approved, it's incumbent upon the developer to move the ball forward. Site preparation can only be approved after the commissioners approve the plat.
202-401 is additional requirements for subdivisions that fall under an exception to the planning requirements. If there is this area has been noted is somewhat controversial in the sense that if they fall under an exception, they're not required to comply with the subdivision regulation. Then can you require these other provisions? We've added in there the county fire marshal shall review the plat to determine the suitability of any private roads in the subdivision for ingress or egress of emergency vehicles, with particular emphasis on the width and load bearing capacity of proposed private roads. This is an effort to try to make sure that public safety is provided for, but it is also a recognition of the limitations of authority on the commissioner's court. So the fire marshal is granted that authority. There needs to be some representation if they are arguing that they're a private subdivision, that the roads in fact are private roads, and the court will be able to look at who's going to be able to respond to a maintenance request. Homeowners association is one option. Follow notes have to be placed on the deeds as a result of that situation that advise the homeowners that the county won't be accepting those roads. Goes on. And so they have to be identified. This question came up in another county. Plat, trying to get to the private subdivision question. A subdivider had presented a plat description of the private roads that opened those roads up to vendors, invitees, basically the world. They wanted to exclude them from being considered public roads. The definition that he selected basically made no distinction between the private and public road. If you read the statute, I think a private road is only available for use by the owner. That could be expanded to his family, but what about invitees? So it opens up lots of unknowns. And I don't know, we've made provisions here that we think are suitable. Whether or not this statute particularly is going to be a challenge, I don't know. But I think you should be ready to defend the statute. We then have a water regulation availability study. That in itself is fairly controversial in some minds, but I think that it, generally speaking, is a very comprehensive approach. You're in a water control area, so I think you have adequate authority granted to you for that regulation. And so I think the water availability regulation section will withstand scrutiny, but that's just a word of warning, I suppose, again. Any questions on that section? 206, the processing of plat. This lays out what the process is, how it needs to be administered, both before a request or the kind of the matters available for putting on the docket. It's again fairly concentrated, fairly straightforward. 209. 200 replatting without vacating the preceding plat falls under the statute. Don't know a whole lot of this is covered by the statute. Amending the plat is covered by statute. Cancellation of the plat is also covered sections that try to track the statute. I don't know that they need to be scrutinized a great deal, but they are comprehensive. Subdivision standards are paired at 300 series, lays out the requirements for developers.
300.1, it says flag lots, have to be a minimum of 5 acres, and the flagpole, excluding the flagpole.
What is it, 300 what?
300.80. It then says lots must have a minimum road frontage of 250 feet. So I'm checking with commissioners. This is what you intend. And do I agree with that to say that's just a great big flagpole, 250 feet is pretty big. Oh,
Yeah, that's the way being a 5 acre tract, yes.
It's my understanding that, flag lots are not favored. I don't know that there's a prohibition that we can impose on them, but I think you could require frontage. And so the minimum frontage would be 60 feet.
how does this work with the previous one? So you can go down to 5 acres, but then you have to have a bigger flagpole?
Correct. So, the 10 acre tract was a 60-foot easement. If you did 6 acre tracts, it's a 250-foot easement, and this is these are 5 acre tracts with a 250-foot easement.
Kind of leaves a gray area.
Yeah, so it's a promotion. If you bump to a 10 acre tract, then you can reduce down to 60 acre or 60 feet.
So when you say that, what you're saying is that somehow over 7, 8, or 9 would be a 250 foot.
Correct.
Lot size and road frontage, density, setbacks set out. You have authority under the 233 of the local code, subchapter E. Have setbacks and frontage requirements, and I think you're complying with those. Fire suppression systems are covered under 301. This is if a subdivision has certain size, at least I think it's more than 50 lots, you can have a 5,000 gallon storage requirement for firefighting purposes. And if it has more than 50, you can have a 10,000 gallon storage tank. Those are, again, provided by state law that way. Sewage and wastewater disposal, you can have a community system provided already by a city or a water supply corporation that provides sewer. If you don't have that available, you can have on-site sewage disposal that complies with TQ records and requirements. If a subdivision also has provisions for commercial development within the subdivision, there have to be standards that are set there for public health and safety purposes. Setbacks must be at least 50 feet. Stormwater is set out in another location. Driveways have to be provided for. A TIA or traffic impact analysis is called for when there's a requirement made that the traffic volume at that location would exceed 2,000 vehicles per day.
So is there I don't like putting numbers on that, because if that's a 2,000 vehicle trips per day, how many vehicle trips per day is per household? 10, 9?
How many trips per day?
Per household. So if you're doing the calculation, how do you get 2,000 vehicle trips per day?
In my experience, you put a road, counters across the road and you count accidents.
But if we're in a development stage and they're trying to make a development and we're having to predict that they're gonna have 2,000 vehicle trips per day to make sure that they do impact analysis, let's just say it's 10, right? That'd be 200 tracks you would have to have a traffic impact analysis. I'm wanting to know is, can we take that number out and just leave it to the discretion of the court if we need, or during the pre-construction phase or something of that nature? Because, depending on, I might have 50 lots that where it comes out might need a traffic impact analysis because it might be detrimental to the location.
I suppose you could make a distinction there in the construction of the project that the traffic study would only be conducted after you didn't have to know that.
Now, he's talking before the first meeting.
Right.
The meeting with the commissioner even before they file
I think you need a metric, but I'm not sure how you're gonna get there.
anything. Okay, so the standard household is 2.5 people.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is, but that's what I.
3.5 probably is the standard.
3.5. And then they do a standard number of road trips per house. Right?
Right.
And apparently it's 110.
Well, some people said 10, some people said 9, so I don't know.
Well, when we did this last workshop, I looked up under the state statute, I believe. And then there were 3 slots in it at that time.
So if he has a 50 lot subdivision, that's 500.
500 per day. And then it has a breaking point where it's 50.
Is that not all?
Well, according to this, it's 2,000.
And so
if a 200 lot subdivision would require impact analysis, if you did 199, you don't have to do it. So
that's basically what it says.
And I know
That's where you're coming from on that.
in TxDOT personnel I've talked to, they don't put a number on it, they just, it's based on each individual one's based on a different scenario.
Could we do it backwards instead and used a much lower number, say 500 or even lower, and authorize the commissioners to wait.
And that's fine.
I don't know, I'm just asking. Lawyers.
I don't have an opinion on it.
Do the commissioners have a lot of communication with TxDOT, with the personnel here in the county who would do the survey?
No. No, because when someone goes and does a driveway permit, TxDOT doesn't reach out to the commissioners and say, we're gonna make them do this or do that. It's after the fact and they're turning in the paperwork to the service. And, needless to say, if this is on a state highway, it all falls under TxDOT rules anyway. But always my big concern is I'm gonna build my big subdivision and I'm gonna put it out on this little county road because I don't have to do this, and yet it dumps right into a state road that they're just skirting away by turning the road this way instead of that way.
Good point. I came over today, the back way, I say, trying to save a little time, and I ran out of time because of all the traffic and all of the joiners to this major thoroughfares.
But can you, through our third-party engineer, require the developer to get an outside audit? There's companies that do traffic survey, and require them to do a traffic survey because of concern you might have.
Yeah, we can require them to do an impact analysis, a survey. It's just, do we want to put a number on it, or do we want to leave it to a determining factor at that point? I mean, if I've got a 10-lot subdivision that comes out on 281 that has a turn lane already, obviously I don't really need a traffic impact analysis.
Well, you're saying they're doing away with that number in other places, right?
TxDOT, from my experience with TxDOT, they don't have a number on it, they just look at it as a whole.
Well, if it's coming out of text,
I know.
we don't have anything to say about it anyway.
Right.
It's county road, what we're worried about.
It's also, I guess it would be beneficial if they was to do a traffic impact analysis, so we could share that information with TxDOT during that protocol. That would be a benefit. So, and then the other point I have on that section is under the commercial site development, and we have an excess of 1,000 vehicle trips a day. I would like to say just all commercial sites must have a traffic impact analysis. You know, because if I'm gonna put a convenience store, I don't know how many trips are gonna be there a day. There's no way to tell.
Where's the number? Not on this, just say not commercial, but previous.
The 2,000
Yeah, where's that?
is 306,101.
Because my version has changed. And it
Did you
says-
change it?
It says a traffic impact analysis may be required.
She changed it yesterday afternoon, I recall.
The commissioner will determine this at the preliminary conference.
But is that finally like that?
I like it.
Okay.
That's different. What I
And then what does 3 say?
3 still says 1,000.
See, I want to change to all commercial development sites must have as well as putting a number on.
Little guy.
That is true. Okay, but
I can't believe this.
how do you distinguish between a convenience store
The same way you.
and a mom and pop?
The same way you do it, the same way you do it on traffic analysis may be required.
Okay, I'm fine with it.
So that sheet of paper I gave the commissioners before we started today's meeting has the changes that Chris and I discussed.
Okay. So did you get what he just changed on your number 3?
I'm sorry.
You want to make number 3, look like number 1.
So have we determined at the pre-meeting?
Because if, like I said, if you have a mom and pop Western wear store as opposed to a Circle K or a big convenience store, that's 2 different things. In my opinion.
We ready to move on? Yeah, I kind of listen to people in matters, so,
Roads and street requirements are laid out. These largely are pulled out of your existing statute. They're pretty comprehensive. I don't know that there are requirements that we go through all of those. They're pretty, I think that they're more battle tested than some of the other provisions.
yeah, I do have one question for the commissioners, it's 307-120. First 5 words, all roads shall be paved. Do you really mean that? Do you really mean that?
Can you give me an instance where you don't think it should be there?
I can't remember if it's your or Commissioner Eager's tiny one, subdivision, the west end of the town, that I thought they were gonna use like base and not pay.
That was based on the rules and regulations that was in place. It's changed to this. Right.
And that's my question, and it's 5 tiny homes out in the middle of nowhere, and I just wondered, if we really want to pay it. I'm okay, I just want sure everybody, that's what you meant. This will apply to every single development.
I guess they can always, request a variance.
It's not all you're gonna have, but it was ready for multiple.
So So we move on.
All right.
That section runs over to,
Actually, I have something on 190, if we're not, it's still 37190, that says that, a divided road is not permitted unless the road's going to be maintained by somebody else in the county. So, now why is it, I just couldn't understand this, why is it some really nice subdivisions put together where you have a divided road in the subdivision? Why is that not permitted?
Because a lot of it's got to do with shrubbery and grass and all that. Do we maintain that too?
Well, we don't unless we take it.
That's what I'm saying.
But if you take it, then I guess you do.
So,
It's pretty simple. A divided road will not be permitted unless the road will be maintained by some other person.
correct. So I didn't count it that.
Yeah,
Two miles of freight roads and all that.
So that there's not a hook there that someday the county might take it.
Oh, I don't see it happening. If it did, it would be sometime down the road.
So I got 307.
so this goes over to 308, clearing the right of ways. I think that's fairly straightforward. 310. 309 is roadway excavations, self-explanatory, subgrade, base and course, fairly example, clearly set forth. The rest of the regulations, gentlemen, are mostly set out in tables, engineering, mechanics, and so forth and so on, and I frankly have not attempted to review those for any legal purpose.
And that was done through our engineers that we use, one of the ones that provide all that.
So that brings us then to the appendix. There are appendices for attempting to try to cover the waterfront. But that would make up your new regulations if you choose to adopt it. If you're going to recess and repost your agenda item, I think you might want to take that up, Gary, and interim, and try to come forward with a fully complete document. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Bass. Kim, is there any more? So I believe that is our plan, is, I just, based on what you have, you all will work on the final. Ms. Harrison will publish the final, I say publish, I'm using publish the final, and we'll get an actual action agenda item for the 23rd. To take it up. Are we good with that? Yes. You don't have any problems with that? Okay. All right, then I'm going to close with, no more to do. We'll close the public hearing in this matter and move to regular part of the agenda. Mr. Hembright, did you still want to make a comment on number 19, the update of land, or is it being dead?
What's that?
Or is it land? That's it, let's move to agenda item number 1, your consideration of prior minutes.
I move that we dispense with reading the minutes and approve minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Eager, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries. Item 2.
I make a motion to approve the estimated payroll for January 2024 in the amount of $493,283.
Is there a second? Mr. Riley, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, official reports, and I believe they are all on the inspection. Subject to your approval.
I'll make a motion to approve official
reports as presented in November 2023.
Is there a second?
I'll say.
Commissioner Weir, discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
That was in December. Okay, I can read what was there. I've changed that motion to December 2023.
My agenda says November.
Yes, that's a typo, sir.
That's fine.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, line item transfers, there's one sheriff's office, just one I can comment on because it's the phones, and there's actually 2 comments to be made about this. One is that $14,000 is essentially money that Ms. Harrison did to save us by moving us to Wilson Blackie, so kudos to her. And 2, we're probably gonna need that money if you approve the AET contract later on, because we're gonna have a monthly fee that we didn't really budget for yet. That said, the line item transfers are submitted for your approval.
I move to approve the line item transfers as presented.
Is there a second? Second. Commissioner Riley, discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Outstanding bills.
Make a motion to approve the outstanding bills in the amount of $567,013.58.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Euchre, discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, authorization to design disbursements for routine office expenses. Ms. Swift could better explain this, but essentially this, I guess the county treasurer's listserv association folks, and specifically Denton County, made this known to her that this can be done, and it provides for her to be able to handle routine office expenses and not wait for Commissioner Court approval and have to kind of awkwardness that we've had the last few months of extra stuff that we had. So it's still all gets reviewed by the Commissioner Court, it's just a question of approving the process. So it's an authorization.
I make a motion to authorize the county judge to sign the order of disbursement of salaries and routine office expenses.
Is there a second? Second. Commissioner Euchre, discussion.
Yes, no,
I got something. No. I tried. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 7. Kendra Morgan has, this is, I believe, the second annual $15,000 donation for the benefit of the Starfly project, subject to your acceptance.
I move to accept a $15,000 donation from Kinder Morgan for the benefit of the Starfly project.
Is there a second? Second. Mr. Riley, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 8, renewing the contract with Hill Country IT. We're not ready. The TAC folks are still providing comments to Ms. Ashby, but I'm pretty sure we'll have it on the 23rd. So we'll pass that, please. Item 9, this is the, I wish Mr. McBain were here. This is the ADT courthouse fire alarm system that he has investigated for us and receiving your authorization to enter into a contract with ADT. It provides fire and motion sensing inside the courthouse with contact dispatch if there's a alarm. So
I make a motion to authorize the county judge to enter into contact with ADT for installation and monitoring of the fire alarm system at the courthouse.
is there a second? Commissioner, your discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 10 is form builder for the county attorney's office. It's just a helpful tool that they need. What's your authorization?
Make a motion to authorize the judge to enter into a contract with Thompson Group for a document creator program, form builder for the county attorney's office.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Riley, discussion. Do you have any questions, Ms. Ashby's in the room? All in favor, say aye. All All opposed? Motion carries. Item 11, e-recordings, this is for Ms. Wallen, and she can better explain it. Essentially, it provides the public another way of submitting recordings to her office from pretty much anywhere.
I'll move to, authorize the county judge to enter a memorandum of understanding for direct submission of e-recording for the county clerk's office.
Is there a second?
I'll say.
Mr. Eager, discussion. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 12, interlocal with ESD number 2 for the community paramedics.
Make a motion to authorize the county judge to sign an interlocal agreement with Blanco County ESD number 2 for the office space for the community paramedics.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Weir, discussion.
So, where is this going to be?
Do you remember the office that Oscar?
Yes.
The elections administrator used to do? They're making them combine, if this is approved, it'll be a combined office for two of them.
Okay. Is there no room at the
That's the reason this is happening is, I'm sorry, where?
At the CRC?
Mr. Hatton can talk to us about that, but he currently office in the CRC, and he has some difficulties. First, the office itself is big enough for his body and him, and that's really all. Visitors almost have to stand, and in addition, he has no storage space because he has to share no workable storage space because he has to share it with 3 or 4 different other entities in one office. And in this office, if you remember, it has all the shelving. You'll be able to have a centrifuge for blood spinning and other stuff that you can't do right now.
I guess the reason I was asking, I met with PSHS the other day, and we went out to the CRC and met with the mental health people and, things of that nature. That seemed where it should fit better, but, I don't know the layout of that building, please.
So the inside of the building where all the main offices are, where all they are, those offices are not big enough or equipped to store the materials and equipment so we need for the CHP program. Currently, we're in the medical suite where we have an office that I am officed in. My desk sits sideways. One person can come in an office and talk to me. If there's more than one person, they literally have to sit in the chair out in the hallway. The one closet that I have in the CRC, in that building office area to store my supplies and stuff, that closet is filled with all the supplies for the Brave Alliance, WIC, State Department of Health, and my stuff. So all of our supplies are intermingled and mixed, and I'm having to store supplies in file cabinet drawers beside my desk because I have no storage space where they can actually put it and walk away where somebody else may need to get to it when you get to it.
Now that's you. There's no space for the other community paramedics.
No, so there's no actual space for him. There's no space in there for him to have his own desk and he locks stuff up. It does have a little front reception area, but that area can't be blocked off. And that area has to be open for when WIC comes into the office, when the State Department of Health comes into the office to work so that they have that space also.
And that's originally how this conversation ever started, was Mr. Oakley was asking me because there's no place for your second community paramedic down south.
Me and Sean, we cannot sit in the office together and work right now. We don't have a space to do it. So
at the CRC.
Other discussion?
Do you have it broken down like territorial, like north, south?
No, sir. We do not split between patients. We alternate seeing patients just because we want us to both be able to see patients from both areas. So we do not have like a north and south person. We both see patients from opposite ends of the county. And we try to rotate when we see which patients we see, so that they get so that they have local support. Because we rotate call on weekends now, so we want all the patients to be comfortable with both of us and not I don't want you to only work with me and then Sean be on call for the weekend and you call me Sean and you go, this guy doesn't know me, I've never met him. I don't respect your trust decisions.
But as far as like total people that you see, you have, is it like 50% in the south end?
So right now, we're pretty well on an even split. I completed my monthly report the other day, and if I remember right, it's around 25 or so in Johnson City, around 25 or so in Blanco, 5 in Round Mountain, and 2 in the Spring Branch area, is the way that it all falls out right now.
So Ms. Fees has an office down the hall from you. Ms. Wall, they have the office, you're there, that's the office next door. And they have office hours, and they have people, and they receive the public, and they do business. That is their business.
Yes.
Your business isn't really sitting in that office, is it?
No, sir. The main time that we're in the office is when we're doing charts or we're attending Zoom meetings or, I mean, right now, since Sean just came on, I maybe spend an hour and a half, possibly a day actually in the office. Unless it's just a extraordinarily rare day. The majority of the time, my office is the car between patients and stuff. I come back I go out sometime in the morning to type charts from the day before or finalize some stuff. And then I may go to the office in the afternoon to type up some stuff, finalize some stuff, or make a few phone calls. But for the majority of the day, we're on the streets in our car.
But over here, you have the room to, put your inventory in order to be able to.
Yes, sir. So, Judge took this to me by the other day, and looked at it, also took Sean by to look at it. We really like to set up the room with all the extra spacing, because it gives us, we have all the bottom cabinets that we can put supplies in. Plus, we have the shelves up top where we can, as Judge said, we can put our centrifuge, for lab testing that we have to do. We can store our lab supplies or we can get to them. Because currently, if I go by my office in Johnson City, the CRC, and I need to come draw your blood, I go by there, I get my orders printed out, then I have to go to the Johnson City station and pick up all my blood draw supplies because I don't have room to store them where I'm at. Then once I go draw your blood, I have to go back to the station to process the blood before I can go back in my office to finalize it and send it off.
Having a central location, you'll be able to serve people.
Yes, we'll be able to bring the supplies that we need in there, have it in the counter. We can set up a drop-off point, and then when we process somebody's lab work, we're ready to send it out. I mean, Quest will come by and pick it up. Whereas now, to do that, you know, I'm making 3 trips to process one batch of blood and get it labeled and printed and shipped out.
Is there any other protocols that you're talking about, different things like that, that TAC would have an issue with, as far as insurance, you know, never we've got blood being drawn at this location?
They shouldn't, that would fall under our lab license. We won't actually be doing the lab draws there, we'll just be processing there, just run it through the centrifuge. And we hold the license for that part.
Anyone else? All right, I think there's a motion on the table by Commissioner Eager and a second by Commissioner Weir to approve and authorize the local. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Thank you.
Item 13, Exxon, this is the 8th amendment to our next one.
Move the county judges and act on it in the past services.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The top loading Maytag has reached its end of life, and I'm unfortunately asking you to declare it surplus.
So moved.
Oh, so moved, sorry. Second, Commissioner, your second discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Austin Smith, who you may remember, he started in Blackburn, he started in the sheriff's office. I think he started in the sheriff's office. Then Blackburn County being recruited by Constable Busey as a deputy constable, and we ask for your acceptance of his bond.
Move to accept bond for Deputy Constable Austin Smith.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Weir, discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item 16. Academy reserves for Constable Busey. Who is here by the way? Any questions? You want to say anything?
Just that I think David Jordan would be a wonderful addition to our county. Looking to put into the Catacomb Regional Law Enforcement. He being sponsored, he would be there to represent the precinct board, and we can use a whole, he would be there essentially in uniform. He grew up in Jerkin Springs, he's localish to this area. Of course, I think it's going to be a wonderful addition to the county as a whole. I'll seek to make a commission deputy constable come October with the benefits.
With assistance funds, we, your physical training funds, is this a grant or is this something we budgeted?
This is the latest funds. There's a good amount left over from my predecessors that want to use training funds. So if he's approved as a part of the office, as a part of the county, those training funds can then be used for him to seek this academy training. So this would not be budgetable.
Any motions?
Move to appoint David Jeremiah Jordan as an unpaid reserve cadet to include approval for sponsorship by the precinct court constable's office to represent Blackbrook County in the Catacomb Regional Law Enforcement Academy.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Weir, discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Yeah, I believe you have the printout for acknowledging Ms. Spees'
I'll make a motion that to continue education for tax assessor collector fees as set out in section 6.23.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Eager, discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 18, Eclipse Day. I put this on here. There's no material. It was supposed to be a discussion. I'm sure it was tired of discussing at this point, but evidently at a meeting Commissioner Eastman led, there was some question about the county having about the county taking the day off or closing for the day because of the hordes of people. And apparently the city, I'm told, the cities here in Wayne County are thinking about doing that. I don't know what the schools are doing.
So I can tell you that both Johnson City ISD and Blanco ISD are closed for the day.
And I don't know, I think there are other counties that are also doing, and they're also closing. But we have an official, we just adopted an official holiday schedule, and Eclipse Day is not one of those. I certainly, I'm not going to call it a disaster at this early stage. So to me, it's a commissioner's court decision whether or not to close on Eclipse Day. That's all I'll say.
So the talks that we've had throughout our emergency management meetings, the population increase throughout the day is ideal to keep people at home and off the roads. However, I know that creates issues throughout the county. As a private business owner, it's one thing, but as a county as a whole, it's a whole different story. So I don't know what the best scenario is in this whole day.
I guess I'll venture a bit. I don't really I think we have a fair amount of employees who have, children that are probably in our schools, and this is one of those situations kind of like bad weather. When the schools close, what's the parents supposed to do? So I don't know if that should matter or not. I'm complete. Let's say nothing.
So, you know, if you think about essential workers, the all road and bridge guys are probably gonna be essential workers that day, based on the requirement and the need to get things moved from one location to another. Office personnel might not be so essential. Law enforcement, of course, are essential. They're gonna have to work no matter what. And it's not only an option to have off, it's a mandatory you're gonna work. So how is that fair to all them? And then, you know, what do you do for the people that are gonna work on the day that you give off? If we was to give it off, the people that work during that day, is that a time and a half, you know, comp time deal? Or is it, you know, how is that gonna all lay out? So it's ultimately gonna be up to the elected official of the deal, in that scenario.
If you want to be with your kids and you take a day vacation,
Yeah, we sure can.
if you don't want to do with it, you work.
Okay, I think, I'm gonna put this on again, just so it's, I don't care to talk about it much more, but just so it's available for us to discuss in case anything changes.
We'll talk more about the Cliff Day than it's gonna last.
All right, item 19, the affidavit of relocation commissioner.
Okay. Okay, I'll make a motion to,
You want to tell us about it?
well, it's affidavit of land has been filed and, it didn't come to us. So what we have to do is, review it and, what did you say?
They filed it without knowledge from the commissioner's court.
Okay, yes.
And there is no order attached to it that y'all approved it.
There's no order. And we're trying to figure out what to do about it.
So, describe to me what's going on here. I'm seeing tracks 2, track 4, track 3. Did they build a road in there?
This was just all with that, out, coming through the courts.
So in other words, he doesn't know because nobody involved anybody in the county.
Are you the representatives? You are. Okay, Mr. Cox, tell us what's going on.
So out on Gibson Road, we've got a 200-acre tract that we're gonna sell four lots. Out of the 200, they're approximately, I don't have to pull it up, 50-acre tracts roughly, 40 to 50-acre tracts, and there's 4 of them. 2 of them have a bunch of frontage on Gibson Road, which we own both sides of Gibson Road. And then the other 2 tracts you'll see, our plan is to build a road back to those 2 tracts in the back with a cul-de-sac.
So why would you think you need a plat if you're gonna build a road?
They're over 10-acre tracts, and it's a private road, it's our road, we own it.
However, you say that, and again, if the Amazon driver goes down there, he's not part of your family.
It's a gated entrance, there's Amazon driver will leave his stuff at the gate. And it's only 2 tracks, the other 2
But
tracks.
you're still building the road.
Do what?
You're building the road, and that's the catch, you're building the road.
Hang on a minute, I'm confused, and I live here, so I heard private road and gated entrance. So the gate that on the eastern boundary that comes to your 57.8 acre tract, that's one of the tracks you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
which adjoins property I'm highly familiar with, is not really, I mean, it's a gate, it's not really a gate, it's a category. And that road is not a private road, I'm not, in my mind, it's not, because it goes on through your properties and on to Walden Retreats, which has become a.
Correct, there's an easement through our property.
Which has become, yeah, but that's the public, construction workers, delivery services, you name it, everybody uses that road, and there's 3 or 4 other neighbors in there too. So how is that a private road?
I was referring to the road that's gonna lead to the next 2 tracks.
To the south.
Correct, yeah, so you
Yours
want
to the left, to the south.
correct, so
That road doesn't exist.
right down the center of, okay, so you have the first 2 tracks that are on Gibson Road, so those have ample frontage on Gibson Road. And then there'll be a gate, and there's a 60-foot wide easement that will go back to the end. We left it with 250 feet of frontage on that road, that each track will have 250 feet of frontage.
And you're building the county spec road.
No.
Well, or not?
We're gonna build a road that is equivalent to a county spec road, but not to be inspected, because it's gonna be behind a private gate.
So is every other subdivision.
Do what?
Every other subdivision puts gates up as well.
And if they're over 10-acre tracts, the new Texas law doesn't require us to get.
But you're building a road.
Uh,
But you're building a road, and that's what we just talked about earlier.
or what?
You're building a road, and that's what we just discussed earlier. The definition of being a private road. So, this should require a full-blown subdivision. In my
2 tracks?
Yes, sir. You're building that road. That road has to go to.
That's a subdivision.
Okay, so could we do a 60-foot flag lot to those back 2 tracks?
Gibson is not even a county road. I mean, Gibson Road, if I'm not mistaken, I'm not that familiar with this area.
It's not a county road, it's owned by us, and there's easements that go through it, it's maintained by landowners.
May I ask you to, maybe draw, I can't tell, I know, I saw about 2 tracks on the south, and I don't know where those 2 tracks are.
Sorry.
So this is east.
Okay, yeah, okay. So this would be the road. So this is coming off your property going into the county road right there.
It's these 2 tracks, I don't know.
Okay, it would be this 52 acre tract right there.
Okay.
And then this 50 acre tract right there.
Oh, and then this one.
Yes,
So
well, no, this tract would, that's Gibson Road. So this tract would have its own gate right here off Gibson, this one would have its own gate off Gibson. These 2 would share a gate right here with a 60-foot easement to get to this tract. So there would be a gate there going into this one, and a gate there going into this one.
And this road is an easement road, it's not really.
Correct.
It goes through another track.
It's an easement through these 2 tracks.
What's the difference in your road and the county spec road?
Nothing, I mean, we're gonna build a nice road back there to it. We haven't really decided yet if we're gonna pave the road or not. I mean, I don't see where, if we were doing, 15 tracks back there at the end of that road that were less than 10 acres, I think there would be something to discuss. But, I mean, this is gonna be one gate that 2 people use and go down a 60-foot easement to their property.
Is one on the road and the other one have access?
The 2 tracks up front will actually own each half of the road. See how it goes all the way to the center of the 60-foot easement, those front 2 tracks. So they would each own that, and the back 2 tracks are an easement to get to.
Are these tracks restricted in any way?
We haven't decided. I'm sure we'll do maybe some very minimal restrictions like, no manufactured homes maybe. I don't know if we'll do that. As large as they are, I don't know that we'll restrict them.
Right, so I think to Commissioner Wood's question, so these 2 southern tracks wind up being re-subdivided, right? Maybe?
Are you gonna restrict?
No, we're not gonna restrict it, but if somebody was to do that, then they would have to.
That's their issue.
If they did less than 10 acre tracts, they would need to do something. Yeah.
It's 60-foot wide now.
Well, wait a minute, well, if they did less than 10 acre tracts and it goes to a public road, but you're saying it's not public road.
Say that again.
Okay. If you take the 2 south tracks, either one of them,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody buys it and it divides them up into 10 acre pieces,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay if the 10 acre piece is gonna go public road, right? No?
Say that again.
The 10 acre exception, doesn't that require that the land touch a public road?
Touches the public road or a road that county approves specs.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be public road.
No, state highway or public road, or county road for a road to a county specs.
Okay.
However, we just talked to Mr. Bass about this and discussed about the development and the layout of a road. And that's what's gonna be in our pickup.
I would see maybe those front tracks that front Gibson having more of a desirability to somebody to buy and subdivide those rather than those back tracks. You never know.
Is there 60-foot right of way from the front of the 2 tracks all the way to the back?
Yes, sir.
That's all 60 foot all the way down?
Correct. Correct.
If it helps you any, if you're looking at the diagram and you go to the eastern corner of the track where the road starts, there's a little road, the property, at the property line, the road that extends east past the property line is another easement that goes to Tobin Valley.
That's the one that goes back there, like to Wolf Ranch Road, I think they call
Tobin Valley goes to, I'm talking about to get from Tobin Valley to your property and also.
You know, like a little short easement off the toe end, between toe end and cattle road.
That's what I'm talking about.
You're getting.
That second road, it's just an extension of the first one. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's just an extension of the first one.
That's correct.
So it goes all the way out.
When it goes
all the way out to the front, what is it, County Road?
Toe Head Road, Toe Head Valley Road.
Which is County Road?
Eventually, yeah. First, it's another property within the county.
So you got 4 tracks coming out all
No. No. It comes down to another piece of property and then it gets for that Tobin Valley Road. The other piece of property is where I live.
And you can have shared maintenance on the road, shared maintenance.
Yeah, probably, yeah, there would be a shared maintenance with the 2 people in the back, the 2 tracks that would use that road. The way I vision it, the other 2 tracks that front Gibson Road, they would have their own gate entrances, because they've got a lot of frontage there. So they would have their own gate entrances, and the 2 tracks in the very back would share that center easement that gets back to it.
Okay, I really want to make sure. If you look at what it says on the agenda, I think I'm going to ask Ms. Harrison, why are we, see, this did not come before Commissioner Court before it was filed.
That's correct.
Okay.
There was nothing in the rules and regulations that said it needed to, that's the only reason why. No, we were not trying to escape what the rules said. I had no clue that it needed to be done that way. What it said was, once you file them, you need to send them to the county judge to notify the county judge. There was nothing in there that said it needed to go to the commissioners court. I would have gladly done it.
Okay. So you sent it to the commission, to the county judge's office.
Correct.
Ms. Harrison saw it wasn't, didn't go through commissioner court.
Correct.
You're saying.
Already been filed.
They have to, they've been filed. What are we supposed to do now?
Well, there's also, it doesn't even comply with the requirements for the land use affidavit, there's no exception stated on there. So I think it has to, the county has to reject it, file a rejection, and it has to be filed properly.
Okay.
What was that?
And that's even under.
That's even under the old regulations.
Okay.
So what did we not, I don't understand, what did we not do correctly?
First of all, there's no exception noted on there.
Exception for what?
Why you don't think it apply, why the subdivision regulations don't apply to you?
It's over 10 acres.
It doesn't state that's the exception that you're going under.
It references the subdivision regulations 104.2.
Please, Rose, so we can hear you.
The affidavit state that it falls under 104.200 of your subdivision regulations, and is being made in compliance with the exception stated there in your subdivision regulations.
So Ken, is that what you're saying, Sasha? Is that all that needs to be done is the affidavit plan needs to be drafted?
Ms. Harrison's more familiar with the old regs than I am, but there's also some other documents that have to be submitted with it.
And they included the required documents that were set forth in 104.200. I'm so sorry, Judge. Can you appreciate it? I'm sure and I drafted that affidavit on notifications. And we provided the statutory reference, sorry, the regulation, subdivision regulation item, and complied with the requirement that the survey plat be filed along with legal descriptions for each needs and bounds of each tract. Also, Judge, we will require the previous ones from the county clerk records and follow their format.
So you say, and I read, affidavit is prepared in accordance with section 104.200 of Wayne County.
Yes.
And 104.200 says, is entitled exceptions to flag requirements affidavit limitation.
No,
I'm sorry, I think that part's the same. I don't have any other questions.
I don't either.
I brought a copy if you need.
Judge, can I recommend that we pass on this today to give everybody a little more time to look at what they filed?
Okay, because under the new rules, it says, a state of identifying which exception is the property. It is passed. And so I don't know if that language carry over or not. Because did, then this isn't sufficient, but if it didn't, this is. So you will recommend passing.
I am, Your Honor, because I haven't seen what they filed, I just had, just briefly saw the cover letter that was filed.
What say you, commissioners?
Maybe can I ask a question right fastly? In our existing ones, which I don't have a copy of in front of me, under your lots larger than 10 acres, does it mention anything in there about section 232.001A3?
It does not, sir. It says, in all instances in which the division of property is exempt from the requirement that the plat be approved by the Commissioner's Court, the owner shall prepare and submit to the county judge's office an affidavit of fact establishing that the division complies with the requirements of the exceptions. The affidavit is also required in order to comply with the Blandwood County Geographic Information System rural addressing 911 emergency response.
And you just read A, B, and C, right?
Sure.
4.200, I went through.
Sorry?
Under 4.200, I just read that paragraph.
And
So in section
it's
104,
not counted as A, B, and C?
No, sir.
so in section 104.130, lots larger than 10 acres, number 1, what does it say? 104.130.
Going back to the actual exception itself, sir, it says the owner divides the tract into 2 or more parts, does not lay out any part of the tract as described by.
I'm talking about section 104.130, lots larger than 10 acres.
Yes, sir. That was what I was reading from, sir.
The owner divides the tract into 10-acre tracts or more.
Correct.
Does not lay out any part of the tract described in section 232.001A3,
Yes, Commissioner.
which refers to roads.
But that's the argument. Private road, public road.
But item number 3 also
If
says,
you invite a guest, it's now a private road, not a private road anymore.
but Commissioner, it also says each lot has at least 250 feet of fee simple road frontage on a state highway, county road, or road constructed to county specifications.
The road is not built county specs right now.
Where we started with the road, and the road that gets everybody to their Gibson Road is on the county state road. I mean, Walden Retreats is running a business back there, there's probably 15 people that live back there.
But that is why we reserved the 60-foot wide easement. We would have done a smaller one, but we wanted to comply with the county regulations on the road.
So we can pass on it and investigate it more.
You can,
Or I can reject it and
you can do all of it, you can approve it, let it go away, you can reject it, or you can pass on it, and it's actually studied.
pass on it, let's ask the study.
Go for that.
I would make any motion to just do that. And bring it back up. All right. Thank you all.
Does that mean we can put it on the agenda for the next meeting to discuss it
I
again?
hope so. I'd like to get it over with, yeah, I hope so.
Okay,
23rd would be my goal.
okay. Thank you.
Item 20, donation. Yeah, it says also, it's only also,
Yes, sir, so basically, this is a donation that Illinois Building did for the Starflight facility. This includes the pressure tank and all the pump and everything else that they donate. So they want to donate the drilling in the world and the casing of it, this is just all the cuts. $9,174.16. Yes, sir.
discussion. Now, they already donated.
It's 11, 12,000.
So essentially, Illinois Building is providing more money to start planting and get more. Anything else? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item 21 is adjourned. Crickets. Item 22.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Mr. Riley, discussion, all in favor, say aye. Opposed,
I'll never get it back. It's gone.